have, see, this empty folder, no PDFs here right now. So what I have this customers tab. In here, we have our data, mainly in these columns right here. And we have this formula that basically creates a file name for us. And we have this path column where we're going to have the final path for our files when they are actually created. And we have this create PDF button. Now, before I click on that button, I want to show you that we also have this template tab. And I basically kept it very simple and easy here. You can obviously make it more complicated if you wanted to. But in this template, we have our special tags. See, like first, last, amount. And those special tags is what's going to be replaced. Now, to do mapping for this replacement, I'm using this fields tab. See, in this fields tab, we have those same special columns. And then we have which column in our data should be used as a replacement. So for example, see, first column in my customers tab is column number 2. So this last is column number 3. Amount is column number 5. And if you wanted to do more, you could just use that same logic, add more fields and do the columns, and then go to your template and add more special tags. This active tab we just use to actually generate PDFs. We don't really do much in it. So generally, to actually work with this, we're going to need this template to do the template itself. We're going to need fields to map the fields. And finally, we need our data. So once it's all here, we can just click Create PDFs. It's going to run the script. If we open our PDFs folder, you can see we have all the PDF files. If I open one of them, you'll see it creates the file with that person's information for us. And that's what we're going to build in this video. Okay, so let's get started. So all I got here is our data. This is our worksheet called customers. So let's just create a couple of worksheets. I'm going to create one, call it template. I'm going to make another one, call this one fields. So in our template tab, let's just drag this left, I guess. We basically just need the template for our PDF. So here, I'm not going to spend too much time making it pretty or anything. I'm going to keep it very simple. If you want me to do a tutorial of making things look pretty, we can do a separate tutorial on that. But this one, I'm going to keep very simple. So I want something that will basically show me what the final result should be like. So for example, if I had this data and I had Monica there, then I would want, for example, the final thing to say, let's say, dear Monica, and maybe we'll put her last name here too. Your account balance is so what I want to do here, I want to replace this first and last names with some fields. So I'll just go ahead and add a bracket like this, and I'll call this one first. And then the last name, we'll put it in brackets like this. We'll call this one last. And finally, for this one, I'll just call it amount. Maybe we'll add a period after this whole thing. So that's pretty much it. So basically, these are the parts of the text that needs to be replaced with our data coming from here. If you wanted to do more, you would just add more brackets and basically show what the replacements should be. Now, for these fields that I've created here, like this first, last, amount, I'm going to go to that fields tab and just list those. Let's just give this a column name. And we have basically this. We want to make sure we match this exactly to our field names that we use here with spaces and everything. So if you're going to do a space, for example, here, then do that space in fields too. It's probably best to not do that. Now I got my fields. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to map those fields to columns. And what I mean by that is that this first name is going to come from this column here in the spreadsheet, which is the second column. So I'll just do 2. Last name, I believe, was third. And balance would be 4, 5. So this is 5th column in the spreadsheet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm just mapping fields to their columns from this data. So finally, once my template is done and it looks the way I like it with colors and everything, then we're going to make a copy of it. Let's just add a logo here just to make this look a little better. So I'm just going to go to pictures, insert from this device, and just grab a picture. So once this is all complete, I'm just going to make a copy of this tab. So I'll just right click here, move or copy, create a copy. You can also do control and drag. And this one I'm going to rename and call it active, I guess. So I now have all the tabs I need. The reason I need this template is once I go and replace these tags on this active tab, then I need basically to go back to the original on this. So at that point, I'll just go back to this template, copy everything from here, and paste it on template all over again. And that way, for the next record, we'll basically start from scratch. So I'm going to just add a couple of more things. I'm going to go to customers and add a couple of columns here. One, I'm going to call it file name. And the other one, I'll call it path. So these are going to be new columns that we're doing here. So I'll just color code them a little different. And for my file name, we'll basically just use some other fields to generate some sort of file name for our PDFs. So what I'm going to do here for this example, I'll just combine first and last names, put an underscore in the middle, and maybe make it lowercase. But obviously you can use any fields you want. So I'm going to do lower, and then I'll take the first name, concatenate it with an underscore, and concatenate it with our last name. So after this, I want to have something like .pdf. So what I'll do another ampersand, and then in quotes we'll do .pdf, which is our extension, close parentheses, hit enter, and that's going to be the file name we're going to use. Now, as we add more data here, we want this to work. So as you can see, I don't want that. So I'll just go here and add an if statement. So I'll just say if, I'll go with last name equals blank, then let's leave it blank. Otherwise, let's do this formula to create our file name. So at this point, what should happen if I just drag this formula down for some time, that should just create this for these lines where last names actually exist. So this path, we're going to autocomplete with our script. So as far as formulas, we're done. So at this point, we're going to get to writing some code. So I'm going to go to developer. If you don't have developer tab, you can activate it by going under file, go under options. And here, if you go to customize ribbon, you'll have this checkbox for developer right here. For me, it's already active. So we're going to go to developer, go to Visual Basic, and I'm going to right click here in this project. This is my file name, data file. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Right click and do insert module. So I'll create a subroutine. So I'll do sub, we'll call it make PDFs. I hit enter, it does the autocomplete for opening and closing. So I need to store some references to all of these tabs, active, template, fields, customer. So I'm going to define those here. So this would be our variable for our active worksheet here. We'll do the same for all of these. So these are just variable names right now. We're going to actually now link those variables to hold those worksheets in them. So what we'll do set that variable name. And we'll point to the actual name of the tab. So this active is this right here, this tab name. So again, repeat for all of them. So now we have all the tabs. So what we're going to do, we're going to basically loop through all of these names in this customers tab, starting from row 2, going all the way down. Now for that, we have to find how many rows of data we actually have here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use one of the columns where I know I'm going to have values to figure out how many rows I have. I'll just pick this first customer IDs in this case. So let's create that for loop. So I'm going to create a variable R. So the starting point is the second row, and the ending point would be the last row in the first column. So for that, what I'll do, I'll take the worksheet, which is called customers tab, and then use cells. And I'm going to start from the bottom and go up to figure out how many lines we have. So I'll just do rows.count. And I'm going to do that in the first column. So here we'll do end Excel up. And that's similar to basically doing control up. So if you go all the way down in this column A and then press control up, that's going to take you to the first cell that has some data in it. And I'll do dot row. And then we'll do our next R, which is this variable right there. Let's make this a little bigger so we can see the whole thing. All right, so this should now allow us to start our loop from row 2 and finish that in row 12. Now the next thing we need to think about is now we need to go to this active tab and replace all of these special tags with the data from here. Now the way we're going to know which tags to replace is using these fields. That means I'm going to now have to go get these. Now in this case, however, when I do the loop, I'm going to loop through the fields themselves in the range instead of getting me from row 2 through row 4. So for that, we'll do our for each loop. And we'll use our range object. Now for the range, we're going to use 2 cells to figure out which range it is. I'm going to define those in a second. Let's for now just do this. Actually, let's do field instead of cell. As a variable name, that makes more sense. So the way I'm going to define this range, it's going to start from this A2. So A2 would be second row, first column. And this would be the last row in the first column again. The last row we're going to figure out in a second, but for now I'm going to do first column. Now, the thing about all of these, the range, the cell, all of these, they're all supposed to come from this fields tab. So for that reason, all of them should be prefixed with this. So it's going to be fields.dat, fields.this, and fields.that. Let's make this bigger again. And the last thing here, we also have to find the last row right here in this position, which is going to be very similar to what I did here. The only difference is that instead of customers tab, it will be fields tab. So what I'll do, I'll just copy this, paste it right there, and just change this to fields tab. And as far as the column, it's going to remain the same. So we're going to check that in the first column right here to find the last row number. So that should hopefully allow us to loop through those fields. And each time that field is going to be one of these cells. So once we start looping through this field, we should be able to get the value of the field, which will be this text right here. So the way we can get to it is by doing field.value. And then we can also get this value from this next column, which is the column number from our data here. And the way we can do that is by offsetting. So if we do the field, which will be that cell, if we do offset, we can do 0 rows to stay in the same row, but do 1 column offset like this. Let's actually correct that. And then dot value. So this should now refer to this, and this is going to refer to our first column. For now, I'm going to comment those lines. So now let's go to our active. This is where we're going to search and replace all of those fields that we just discovered here in this loop. Now for that, we first have to provide the range where we're going to have to search and do this replacements. And again, depending on how much stuff you did here, it's going to be different. So you want to keep this as small as possible so there is less work for our script to do. Like in this case, the range where I need to do replacements is going to start from here and it's going to end here. It's just this area. Now, this is just the same column. It's just overflowing. Now, if you have more stuff here, you're going to have to select that whole area. And also, I don't select this because I'm not replacing anything here. So it's going to be from A4 through A6 for me. So I'm going to go here and define that range before this loop. So we'll do a variable like this, and then we'll set that variable. And that is supposed to come from that active tab, this right here. And from that, we're going to do a range. And it's just going to be a regular range, like A4 colon A6, which is pretty much this area. Now I know in which range I need to do those replacements. So I'm going to loop through all the cells from this range. And as I loop through them, I'm going to go and search for all these field values and replace them with whatever value it needs to be from our data. So we'll do it right in this loop. So first, I'm going to have to loop now through this range. So that's going to be pretty similar to our loop we just did. This one, I'm going to call it cell. Only now we have the range like this. We don't have to do any of that other stuff to figure out where the range actually is. And this would be next cell, which is this variable right here. You can call it whatever you want. I think cell is pretty good. We're going to take the cell value. So cell value in this case refers to the actual value here, right? Like the first line would be this text, dear first last. That's your cell value. So what we're going to do, we're going to use Vba Replace function here. And this function, see, it has expression as string, find as string, replace as string. So basically, where's the text that we want to search? So this is going to be the text. We're going to search in that text for that thing in brackets, which is going to be this field value. And we need to replace it by the actual value that comes from our customers tab. Now to get to that value, we're going to take that customers tab. And on that, we're going to take cells object. And we need to give this a row number and a column number. Row number is the row number that comes from this external loop that we've created to loop through all the lines in our customers tab, which will be that R variable I've defined here, comma. And the column number here is going to be the column that we extract from our fields. Remember this field offset, when we go one right, it gives us the column number where matching information should be. So let's just copy this, paste it right here. And this will give us the cell, but we don't need the cell. We actually need the value of the cell. So we're still getting errors, and the reason I'm getting errors is because when you do this replace function, you have to save the results in a variable, which I haven't done yet, which we'll do in a second. But for now, that should get us the correct thing. So what we'll do at this point, we'll just go back right here and we'll save the results back in that cell. So we'll do cell.value equals whatever that replacement may be. We could probably make it more efficient, but this will do for this. Now, we want to test to see if this even works at this point. So if I'm successful at this, we should be able to get those replacements here. So what we'll do, we'll just do F8 and just run this line by line and see what happens. Here's the moment. So we got to this replace the first time. Let's do F8 and see how that name here was replaced by Monica. So it's actually going to go through this field, and once it's done, it's going to return to last name in the next iteration. So this is where, see, there it is. Okay, so hopefully that will also replace that amount. So I got to this external loop. That means we're done with this record. I want to see what this looks like. So this is pretty good. The only problem here is that this is not formatted. So I'm going to stop this execution, do this reset. So this number should be formatted like this. But when we get the value, we don't get the format. We just get the value. Now, this is the reason we're going to need this template, because we overwrote all of this, we're going to need a fresh copy of this. So I'm just going to, for now, copy and paste manually here. Now let's go back and try to address that problem with that dollar amount. When I did this code, I said, let's go search the cell. Then let's go find the field we're searching in that cell. And then I did this replacement from the spreadsheet right here. So that was all of this, and then dot value of that cell. So instead of getting the value, let's get text.text. And that should get us formatted text instead of just unformatted value. So let's try to do this and see if this looks better. So I'll just basically push this on a side like this and press F8 until we get to that point. So I think now we get our formatted number. And it seems like it was formatted as accounting format. So we got this extra space and stuff like that. You could just format it, I guess, as currency. See, right now it's accounting, so there's this extra space. We could change this to currency format, and that should have less spacing. So now, as we're about to go to our next step, we want to remember that once we run this for the first record, if we try to do this now for the second record, we're not going to be able to do that because our special tags are not here to replace anymore. So what we'll need to do after we're done with this record, we want to then just replace this with a fresh copy of this here. So what we'll do, we'll get back to this. When we get to this loop, before we even get to getting to these fields and changing fields, we'll just make a copy right here. And since it's going to basically be this range right here, let's just put that in a variable on top here. And we'll save it as a string type because it's just going to be text here. And we'll just take that and make it equal to that range. This one. And then later, we'll just use that variable here. And the reason I do this is because we're going to need that same range from our template. So let's just copy these two lines and paste them below. Name them appropriately. And this is not going to come from active tab. This will be coming from that template tab, which will be this. But the range will be exactly the same because it's an identical copy. So it's still going to be A4 through A6. So now that I have these saved, I should be able to go within this loop. Right before we do anything, we'll just copy from the template and put all that information in our active tab. So I'll just take that template range. And I believe this should have copy method. And see, it's going to need destination. So for that, I'm going to provide that replace range variable. Let's make sure we type that correctly. So that's going to be here. So we'll take this, copy that to here. And after that, it should be able to do these replacements. So let's check this and make sure this works. What should happen now when I start, it should basically start by copying that and replacing this with our template. So I'm going to do F8 so we can actually see that in action. See, that copy was made. Now it's all clean. So we should be able to now run this and replace it with Monica's information like we did before. But once we're done with Monica, see, we'll replace it again. And now we should be able to have the next person. And it seems like we do. And you can see now this dollar is formatted a lot nicer with currency. So this works as it should. So I'm going to stop this execution. Otherwise, it's not going to let me do anything. So always remember when you do this debugging with F8 to go through your lines, if you're done, just stop, reset this before you leave. Otherwise, you're going to get errors all over the place. So this is very close to what we need. We're missing the part of saving this to a PDF file. So to do that, I'm just going to quickly record a macro to grab the code for saving that as a PDF file. And then we'll just incorporate that here. So how do we do that? We go back, we take this active tab. And what I'll do, I'll just go to developer, click record macro. I'll just call this temp PDF saver. Shouldn't have any spaces or special characters in this workbook. That's fine. I'm going to press OK. Now we're recording this macro. So all I'm going to do in this macro, just take this tab, go to File, go to Save As. And here I'm going to browse, choose the folder where I want these. So I have this folder where my actual file is. I'm going to actually make a folder here. We'll just call this PDFs. And that's where I want to save my PDFs. So I'm going to go to that folder. And here's where I'm going to save my PDFs when they're actually ready. So you can see how this one is called like data file. It doesn't really matter. Let's just call it some name. And here we're going to switch this to PDF. And that's all the way down there. I don't even think it shows up on the screen, but it's in the list. So see, if I just hit arrow down on this, you'll see that after add-ins and all that stuff, I get to that PDF option. If you're not as zoomed in as I am on my screen, you should be able to see that just fine. So Save as PDF. You can change your options, how you want to save it. I'm just going to leave it by default. Hit save. So as you can see, that actually made that PDF and opened that in here, which I don't really care about. So I'm going to close this. Now we should have recorded this. So I'm going to click stop recording and go to macros. And now click on this temp PDF and hit edit. And here, see, for me, it created another module here. Sometimes it will put it in the same module. It doesn't matter. This is that code. If you pay attention here, basically it does this thing. It changes the directory to that PDF directory. And then what it does, it takes our active sheet and then it will do this export. And here it actually sets the path and the name of the file. And then we have quality and all this stuff. So the only line we should need here is just this. So we're going to copy that. That will have your path wherever you want to save all this stuff and that information for you. So I'm just going to copy this, go to our code. And in our code, we want to save it after we replace everything in the file. So that's going to be right here, right before this next R, because after this next R, we're basically moving to our next record. So right here, I'm going to paste that code. Just going to call it save to PDF. And instead of active sheet, we probably want to just be more specific here. So the tab is called active tab. That's what we named the variable here, if you remember. So I'm going to copy that, go down here and paste that instead of this active sheet. And we'll do that export as fixed format. The type would be PDF. The path would remain largely the same, except of this, where it says some name PDF. We want to actually, instead of doing that, use the name we got here. So let's just see which column this is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for this. So I'll just go and store that someplace on top here. And we'll just make it equal 6. I believe that's what I said. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. And while we're at it, let's also store the same thing for path. All right, so we have this column number now 6, and it's in this variable name. So let's just copy that. And I'm going to scroll down and get to this part. So right here, instead of doing this same name PDF, I'm going to delete that part, go right after this quotation and add an ampersand after a space. And I'm going to concatenate that value from that cell. So that cell value is supposed to come from that customers tab again. So I'll do customers tab dot cells to get to the cell. The cell should be from the current row. So we'll use that R variable. And the column will be that variable I just made a second ago. So I'll just paste it here, which is our file name column position. And we need the actual value here. So we'll do dot value. So that should now go get the right file name for this file and save it in this folder right here. And the final thing here, remember when I saved that PDF file, it popped up right after that in my browser. So this is where it says open after publish. I'm just going to set this to false. So with all of this in place, again, we want to just test this, see how this goes. So I'm going to start with F8. And because I'm not on that active tab, we don't actually see what's happening, but it happens anyways. So now I'm going to do F8 and let's see if this line actually works. I didn't get any errors, so that's good news. I'm going to run this for one more file, and then I'm going to stop. Okay, so I did it for 2. So I'm going to stop this execution and go check what's going on. So right now, if I open that folder, see there's that folder, PDFs. So let's just check these two and make sure our PDFs looks correct. So that's Donna, looks good. That's for Monica, looks good. So these work fine. I'm going to delete all of that. All right, so the last thing I want to do here, I want to add the path to the file here when it's actually done. So I'll go to our code, and we need to do that pretty much here someplace. So for that, I'm just going to move this file name to its own variable, like this much, so we can reuse it. So let's just create a variable for that on top here someplace. Let's just call it full file path, I guess. This will be that variable. It's going to be string text. So we'll scroll down right here. I'm going to make that equal. Let's just do a 0 here for the time being. I'm just going to copy this and paste it right here. So we got the path here in quotes, and then we got our concatenation. And after that, we got that value from the cell like we did before. Now I should be able to use that right here instead of doing all of that. We'll just make it short and nice like this. And now because we have that variable stored, we should be able to go to our next line and also write that to that cell. So we'll take that customers tab and do cells. And in our current row, we want to actually write it to that column. So right now I'll do 7, but I'm going to replace it in just a second. And I'm going to set the value equal this full path. And finally, the 7 should be the same 7 we set here. So we'll just copy that, scroll down, replace the 7. So hopefully that should get us what we actually need. So let's just add this whole script to a button, run, test it, and see what happens, right? I'll just go here, go to this developer, insert this button. I'm going to put it here on top, and I'm going to link it to that function that I've created here, make PDFs. This temp one is that recorded macro. We're going to get rid of it when we're done. I'm going to hit save, change this to create PDFs. Let's take a quick look at our folder. It's empty. Let's run and see what happens. So I'm going to click create PDFs. So there it is. We got all of these links to our PDFs. Let's go take a look. Here's our folder. We should be able to open any of these. See, that's Jose. The amount should be 2052. Let's just check that here. See, that's accurate. Let's just check one more. So that's Ronnie. If we look in the background, we should be able to find Ronnie. And let's look at Ronnie's total. That's all correct. So as you can see, we're able to make our PDFs. And at this point, we can just go back and remove our other subroutine. See, this module 2 has this thing in it. I'm just going to select this and delete. And as a matter of fact, because the module is empty right now, I'm going to right click and delete that module. Do you want to export? No. Finally, because all of this is VBA code, you need to save this as a macro enabled file. So I'll go back to my worksheet. Go to File, Save As. Switch this to macro-enabled workbook and give this a name. And at this point, we should be able to just add whatever data we need in this blue highlighted columns. Click on this and it's going to generate all those PDFs for us. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.